There it is. All right, live in the studio. Let's make sure we're on the cameras. There we go. Yeah, live in the studio, Peggy Farrell. Peggy, how are you today?
I'm great. Good morning.
Bam. Ready to rock and roll. Excited for the podcast. I'm too loud in my mic. Peggy, let's start with introductions. So I met Peggy through a book called Woman Hunter, and then at the Backcountry Hunters and Anglers Wisconsin Rendezvous at the Mead last year, you gave a presentation, which was badass, on becoming an outdoorswoman. And then I started following everything that you were doing through that program, what that program was doing, which led me to Trevor Drake's venison workshop, where we got to meet face to face.
Right.
That was a busy evening.
It was.
There was a lot going on, and I give you both kudos for crushing that. And now we'll be sitting down at Schmeekly this upcoming weekend to go over Mentor 101 for a spring turkey hunt.
Right.
So I'm pretty pumped. So with my little intro, who are you? What do you do now? What did you grow up doing?
Okay, well, that's a lot. I'm Peggy Farrell. I'm the director of the Becoming an Outdoorswoman program, which is outdoor skills workshops for adult women. It's not a membership organization. It's educational programs open to anyone 18 and older. And it started at UWSP in 1991. And other state agencies started to hear about this cool thing we were doing, teaching women how to do things that were kind of non-traditional for many women. So women were considered underrepresented in outdoor activities that, men were participating in, like hunting and fishing. And so we built them a place to come and learn those activities in a safe and non-competitive and really supportive environment. So since that time, then the program has spread to now be offered in 36 states and 6 Canadian provinces.
So awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome. And I don't know if this is answerable, but was there anything like Bo? Is it cool if we call it that going forward?
Yeah.
Was there anything offered anywhere else?
No, there wasn't. I think that's what made it stand out so much across the nation right away after those first couple of successful workshops in Wisconsin. People were going, well, why isn't this anywhere else? Yeah. So it was the first of its kind. It's continued to be successful all these years in. So we'll be coming up on 30 years next year. So it started as kind of an experiment, and it ended up being a wildly successful thing.
Yeah, it's from my first exposure to it and being like, this is freaking amazing. And then what really blew me away is like the Wisconsin one. Like most of these workshops are sold out, and I wasn't seeing any marketing done. It was just so much word of mouth. Like you said, they were so successful. It's such a great program, great exposure for all these people. So I'm super excited to get involved and help out in any little way I can, because more people we get going outside, I think the more healthy people we will have. So I'm pretty excited. What was your first exposure to becoming an outdoorswoman? How did you first hear about it?
Oh, so I came to UWSP. I grew up in Wausau, and I did some school there at what they called at the time the Extension. It's now actually part of the Wausau campus is part of UWSP. But I was knocking around trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I took a botany class up at Wausau, and I was really good at it. And the professor told me, you should maybe consider getting a degree in natural resources. So I came down here, and there are all these choices, and I didn't know what to do. Somebody said, go talk to Christine Thomas. Well, Christine Thomas is the founder of the Becoming an Outdoorswoman program, and it was just in the first early years of Bo getting started. So I knocked on her door, and I said, hi, I like nature, and I like writing, and I really don't know what to do. And she said, well, I'll tell you what to do. You come work for me, And I can give you some writing jobs because magazines and newspapers always want me to write about this little program that I run, and I don't have time. So you do the writing, you help me out with office work, you come to a workshop and see what it's like, and we'll take it from there. So I got a scholarship from, I don't remember. I got a scholarship to write an article on my experience going to a Becoming an Outdoorswoman program. And then it was in the Wisconsin Natural Resources magazine. The DNR sent one of their staff photographers. So something that I always wanted to do, and I got this crazy, lucky opportunity to do that. I was terrified. Yeah. I walked away from that initial meeting with Christine Thomas kind of with tears in my eyes, thinking, oh my God, I can't do this. But that's the kind of awesome person she is. She'll make an opportunity for anybody, take a chance on them, and I don't think it's ever come back to bite her in the butt. So, yeah, so that was 1995, and I just can't thank her enough for that crazy chance, because I wouldn't be anywhere near where I am now without that.
Shout out to her. Awesome. Sounds like a good leader and educator for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What was the first workshop that you went to in 1995?
So it was the same as the very first workshop ever, which is a multi-course 3-day weekend starting Friday around noon and ending Sunday around noon. And there are 4 different class sessions. They're 3.5 hours long each, and you choose from over 20 different classes. And classes are equally divided between hunting and shooting theme, fishing and boating, and then the last third is anything and everything in the outdoors. So camping, canoeing, kayaking, photography, bird watching, hiking, backpacking, and because there is such a wide variety, there's something for everybody. Mm-hmm. If you don't ever want to even look at a gun, that's okay. You can come to a workshop and take all of these other classes and still get outdoors and do healthy things and push your boundaries, discover new things about yourself, step outside your comfort zone, but all in a really supportive environment.
Definitely. And that was the one that just wrapped up at Tree Haven a few weeks ago, right?
Yeah, that was a winter one. So we do one in August at the end of summer, and then a winter themed one with like ice fishing, snowshoeing, cross-country skiing.
Which one gets the better attendance?
Usually winter.
Okay.
So we get people from all over the country, and in particular, usually a handful of folks from southern states. I think that
they're like, think, novelty, winter.
Absolutely, and they think it's romantic and crazy to walk out on a frozen lake and drill a hole in the ice, or to, build a snow cave and try to sleep out overnight. Some people make it. Most people only make it a couple of hours, and then the warm dorm room with the wool blankets are calling. But I think they'd really get a kick out of going back home to their sunny state and saying, look what I did. Yeah, I did that stuff.
It's crazy. That's funny. What, you touched on it a little bit. I'll get too off in the weeds, but you touched on the, if you don't even want to look at a gun piece. So is that a big obstacle for a lot of people that are coming to, or it's this event, especially this weekend event, it's all women, correct?
It is, with the exception of we have a 50-50 ratio on instructors.
Okay. Is the firearm piece, is in your history or in your experience, is that an obstacle that you help a lot of people overcome, be it just they're not exposed to it, they didn't have access to someone to mentor them growing up because of the whole stupid girls stay at home, or guys hunt, the unfortunate thing that that's the world I grew up in when I first learned how to hunt, and it was one of the things that pushed me away is people talking like that. But is that something in your experience that you've had to help people overcome?
Yeah, definitely. So we always do a basic firearm safety course. It's not hunter education, it's just safe handling of firearms. It's 3.5 hours, and the way we start all of our classes is to ask people who they are, where they came from, why they're in the class, what they would like to get out of it. And in the firearm safety class, a lot of people say, I don't know anything about guns. I'm kind of afraid of guns. I just want the knowledge. Many of them will say, I don't think I ever want to shoot a gun. Maybe there are guns in my house and it makes me uncomfortable, and so I need to go to a place that I trust to learn, what does this mean? How do I know whether or not it's loaded? How do I know what kind of a gun it is? So for, I can't say exactly what percentage, but for many of them, the fear and the lack of understanding is definitely a barrier. For some of them, they're there because they do want to shoot a gun, and there's a prerequisite to take that firearm safety class before they can go the next day to the rifle range or the shotgun range to have that class as part of their weekend.
I like it.
So lots of different reasons, but I think, we really do fill that gap of where do I go to learn this? There aren't a lot of places who are, able to really cater to adult women, beginner, teacher, or learning preferences.
Yeah.
And that's something that we studied pretty carefully early on. How is it that women like to learn? And found out early on they don't like a competitive environment. When they get out on, the trap range, it's not all about who crushes the most clays. It's like, maybe who went from, I don't think I can do this, to, I just pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
That's really important too.
It's so funny you mentioned that. I just picked up 5-stand out at the Ashley shooting range to get better at wing shooting because I'm terrible at hitting grouse. And there's like I have yet to shoot with a female. I'm hoping that happens because exactly what you're talking about happens out there. We shoot around and all of the guys of a certain age or just disposition have to go crowd around the scorer, and they're like, look at it. I laugh because it's very similar to when I coach little kids and we do anything that has a score, or they have to come crowd around and look over my shoulder.
Right.
Where am I? What am I doing? And I'm just sitting over, I'll stay in the corner, pick up my shells, laugh a little bit from just people watching. And then there's the older, there'll be a few older shooters, older gentlemen, and that's the person I go talk to. We talk about the wind, how the clays were flying, what we were thinking about today while we were shooting. Those are the things that matter to me, why we're shooting, catching up with each other. Whereas, there's, so in my world for coaching, most of 70 to 80% of the population is female. And I see a lot of super competitive females in this setting, in the gym setting. And it's what you're saying though rings true because a lot of them are coming for they don't want competition. They don't want the leaderboard that you see in some gyms. They don't want keeping track of reps or anything that they're just there. I want to sweat. I want to move because I know it's good for my body. I want to be fit for my family, and I think that that's kind of how I create the gym atmosphere too, is around those ideas of no competition, just how do we learn, how do we move, how do we have fun, and then take that into the rest of our life. So yeah, what you're just talking about, I love it. Rings true for a lot of different aspects of.
Interesting. I wouldn't have thought it would ring true in the gym. I would, although, yeah, I mean, I go to a gym, I go to the old lady fitness classes, the group fitness classes, and it's not competitive. I think a lot of the women who go there so that they see those same faces 3 days a week, and they get to say hi and chat and catch up and then also, make sure they're staying active and do good things for their body. So, yeah, that's interesting.
Definitely. So for the 3-day bow event, are there can people retake that year after year?
Yeah, they can.
Do a lot of people do? They
do because, like I said, we have over 20 different classes, and they can only take 4. And the biggest complaint is, it's so hard to choose. I want to do all of it. So then they come back. The other interesting aspect of that is that group of people who I said might not even want to be in the same room with a gun, who might take, the wildflower identification class and photography and hiking and maybe kayaking on the side. They may find themselves at a big round table at dinner time with 8 other women, and they're all sharing their stories of what they did throughout the day. And there's somebody who said, I shot the Dirty Harry gun out at the rifle range, and look at my target, and oh my God, it was so fun, and oh my God, the people were so nice, the instructors were so kind and supportive. And that person who just took the wildflower walk, which is terrific, I'm not belittling that at all, they're going, there's this sane, smart, fun, lovely person telling me all about shooting guns. This seems crazy, but maybe I'll try that too. So it's a way for people to sort of, I guess, open their mind to what they might be willing to try and how they might be willing to stretch their boundaries.
I like it. That's a good transition. So let's dive back into early Peggy Farrell life. So where did you grow up? What was the environment like? What were your interests early in life?
Dirt and worms. No, I grew up in the suburbs of Wausau, and my father was an avid outdoorsman. He grew up on a dairy farm, and he was a hunter. I was the youngest of 6 kids, so by the time I was big enough to go out and tromp around with him, he had kind of aged out of hunting. Have you seen the stages of hunter triangle thing? It's really old and outdated now. So I don't think it really applies. But at the time it did. It was like entry level, you want to go and shoot as many as you can. And then the next level is you go for specialization, maybe, using a muzzle loader or a recurve bow to make it more difficult. All that stuff.
I've got it up right now.
So he had
how many siblings did you have?
5.
So you were the youngest of 5.
No, youngest of 6.
Youngest of 6. Oh, okay, yeah. Youngest of 6. How many brothers? How many
3.
sisters?
3 brothers, 2 sisters.
Did all of the girls get taken hunting outdoors?
Outdoors, but not hunting, because like I said, my dad sort of hit that phase of aged out of hunting. So
all of the boys are older than the girls?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so by the time the girls were ready, or at that 12? Is that still usual normal hunting age? 14?
Yeah.
Okay, so by the time the oldest of your sisters was there, he was, what stage are we at? Method stage, sportsman stage, give back stage. So he would have been maybe at the give back stage, but didn't take the girls out, or you and your sisters?
Yeah, really didn't take anybody out. I think he went out into the woods to just be by himself, and he wouldn't come back with anything that he shot. He would carry a gun, but he was in that stage. So, but what we did do was lots of fishing. I remember he took me trout fishing when I wasn't even in kindergarten yet, and I caught a clam, and I was so excited. I took it home in a bucket. He caught a couple of fish. I also got nettles on that first trout fishing experience, but it didn't deter me. We would go wilderness camping every year up to Sylvania in the Ottawa National Forest, and took camping trips up to Canada. That was like our annual vacation, and so we did lots of outdoor things, everything except the hunting.
What was your relationship like with firearms growing up?
No experience whatsoever. Probably by the time I got to be, in high school, 17, 18, and there's a sort of distrustful and disdainful of guns and hunters, and then hit that I'm going to try out being a vegetarian age, and then really disliked hunters and how can people shoot animals. So by the time I got to becoming an outdoorswoman, I was old enough to say, all right, I'm going to take a step back and take a different look at this and try to understand it.
So you were vegetarian when you were first introduced to the. Interesting. Okay. All right. And then and you were so. I always love to have this conversation with my friends that choose to be vegetarian or vegan or pescatarian or any of those, because I want to know why. Like, there's the animal ethics point of view, which I think you just mentioned. There's the factory farming from the land ethic stance some people take. There's the health stance, which is for anyone listening that's vegetarian or vegan, probably the weakest one, because if you're not eating enough, especially from people I see every day in the fitness world, they don't eat enough protein from animal products, which is the easiest way to get them. There's no way you're going to eat enough plant matter to get enough protein then, because you have to eat like 40% more food from plants to get the same amount of protein and minerals that you would get from meat. So the health standpoint, to me, I'm like, oh, okay, I don't even want to have this conversation. But I always love the animal ethics or land ethic conversation. So can you elaborate more on what your thoughts were then and how you've, what they're like now?
Well, then was a long time ago. Who knows what was going on in my crazy young person
Damn
brain.
hormones.
But, yeah. I think it was mostly the animal ethic thing, and then at some point it became when I got knowledge of how factory farming happens. That was a big deal to me too.
Yeah.
So I went, anything that comes off the grocery store shelf on pink styrofoam wrapped in plastic, that's just not good for a whole lot of reasons.
For sure.
Not good for the animal, potentially not good for your health, because you don't know what kind of antibiotics or whatever were used. There's the garbage that's involved with that because of the styrofoam and the plastic. There's the huge open belching coolers wasting energy, because you think about the grocery store, how much energy it must take to keep all that food cold when they're in those open shelves.
Yeah.
The only thing that's
it's not cheap.
Yeah. It's not cheap. It's it's huge waste of energy. So all of those things to me make the traditional way of getting meat, the factory farm meat, are just totally unappealing.
Yeah.
So when I went to that first workshop, because I was writing a magazine article, I thought I better take some classes that I don't have any experience in, or I'm not going to have a story to tell.
And was this was for the DNR magazine, correct?
Right.
Okay.
The Wisconsin Natural Resources magazine.
I still get that magazine. I love
Yeah.
that magazine. So was this, and that's like you said, that's Natural Resource magazine. So the article was just about bow. It didn't have to be hunting or angling specific.
Nope, it was, what is it becoming an Outdoorswoman workshop told from the point of view of a first-time participant.
Nice. Okay, so what, and then you were just talking about picking one that you didn't have experience with.
Right. So I took the firearm safety class.
Okay.
And I was really pretty much okay with that. I didn't feel intimidated by guns. I actually felt kind of excited. And then the next day I took the basic shotgun class. And it was raining, and I had quite a lot of trepidation about what it was going to be like the first time I pulled that trigger. They probably threw 35, 50 clays for me. I didn't hit a single one. But I walked away and went, you know what? I did that.
Mm-hmm. And that was your first time shooting a gun?
It was kind of.
Okay.
I had one other. I'm sure there are a lot of women who have a boyfriend story, right?
I know that's my partner's. That'll be her story about first time shooting was shooting it with her boyfriend. So me at the time. Yeah, she didn't come from an outdoor family. They were like race car Wisconsin family, if that makes sense to you.
Okay.
So they just don't have guns in their house. So yeah, that was a interesting moment, because everything you're talking about, it was like I had no basis of understanding her point of view, because I've had a gun since I was like old enough to remember. I've had a gun in my hand. So yeah, interesting. I was just laughing when you said the boyfriends.
Was it a good experience for her?
She loves shooting.
Okay.
So I'm assuming I couldn't have done
So you did something right.
I couldn't have done something.
Yeah.
She, and then it's funny. So I guess touching on the boyfriend story, from the boyfriend's looking at it, she loves going to shoot. She loves, I think, I shouldn't assume, but I'm pretty sure she loves rifle shooting a lot, and she's good at it. And then I brought her to 5-stand for the first time. I had never shot 5-stand. She didn't shoot 5-stand, but she likes shooting. And we went there on league night. And as soon as we walked in, and it was just bro energy from like the gym, that all these guys there for league, the banter that goes back and forth that we're all too well aware of, that happens from when you get a bunch of meatheads together in any setting, and that then we go shoot, and she's like, I'll just let you shoot this first round. She wanted no part of it. It was competitive. Everyone's a good amount of guy banter, and I went to ask her, I was like, hey, you want to shoot the next round? Nope. She had brought her gun, we brought ammo, not interested at all. So she still likes shooting, and like when I go shoot, she always wants to come with and shoot. But yeah, when you're, kind of, I guess the whole idea behind Bo and the boyfriend gun story, yeah, it's important to always remember the other side of it and where they're coming from and what makes them comfortable, and how can we make sure we're respectful of that.
Yes. And just an aside about like gun clubs, shooting clubs, when they say, how can we get more women involved? You maybe try to temper that bro culture a little bit, because it's intimidating. Mm-hmm. And even when guys have their heart in the right place and they really want to help, it's intimidating when you walk into a place to go shoot and somebody you don't know comes over and says, oh, here, can I help you? Let me show you what you're doing wrong. Yeah. And then coach the hell out of you, like mm-hmm. way too much information, and you're never going to shoot right unless you can just kind of clear your brain and relax and shoot. Because for 5-stand, for trap, for skeet, it's pretty much just swing that gun and don't aim, just point at it and shoot, and then they start breaking. But when somebody's standing there going, all right, so this
is your anchor point. You got to hold the gun this way. You got to make sure the balance is.
That's like too much to process. Then by the time you work that all out in your head, that clay is long gone.
You haven't even lifted the gun yet. You're still like. Yeah. Interesting. All right, so let's get back to Peggy Farrell. She goes to the shotgun range. It's rainy.
Yeah. Super nice people who didn't overcoach and just kept, they were going to stand there until a clay and get wet in the rain until a clay got broke, but it just wasn't going to happen. But, they I don't know, they were just really nice. I can't remember what exactly they said to me, but whatever it was, when I walked away, I did not feel bad. I was actually like, I kind of suck at this, but you know what? I might try again. Yeah. And that instructor, in fact, still teaches with me today.
Awesome.
So, yeah, he's a really old guy.
Who's that person?
Mike Fitzgerald. I'll have to tell him to tune into the podcast so he can hear me describe him as a really old guy.
Really old guy. Mike Fitzgerald. Good. That's awesome that he's been with. So he's been 1995, and he still teaches.
Yeah, he actually was at the very first workshop. I think he's the only instructor who was at the first workshop and has never missed an August bow up at Tree Haven Field Station.
Wow.
So he's been in it for longer than me, and he's not going anywhere.
Is there a bow hall of fame for instructors?
There should be. He'll be at the top. We're working on that.
Yeah, that should be like a plaque wall at Tree Haven. Yeah. The Hall of Fame.
There you go. That's a great idea.
Wow, that's crazy. Good for him. He's killing the R3 game.
He is. And he's a 35, 40-year hunter education instructor.
Oh,
he's
wow.
had thousands of students through hunter ed, and that's something he's always been really devoted to. So He's a good guy.
Awesome. So you've just completed your first round of clays in the rain, and you're like, cloud nine. How did that...
Maybe not cloud nine, but...
how does that... Because that's an aspect of R3, I think, currently being covered by a lot of places, is how do you get someone from that point, either their first time with a firearm, their first time on a hunt, how do we integrate that into an outdoor lifestyle, right? How do we get that person interested in purchasing their own firearm, interested in finding public land or private land access to hunt on, scouting, blah, 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 blah. The list goes on of all these other aspects of it that I know you're well aware of. For you, what was the next step, I guess, or what was the next moment?
Well, first of all, I think if I hadn't been an employee of becoming an Outdoorswoman at that time, if I had gone to just that one workshop, there's a high possibility that would have been a one and done. When I left the workshop, I was totally on cloud nine due to my other experiences, which I can tell you really quickly about.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
You know, when that high sort of wears off, if you don't have somebody who's going to take you by the hand and do some more stuff with you, it just becomes a really fond memory. And I think that was highly likely that would have happened to me if I weren't continually involved with the program, just by virtue of the fact that, you know, I got hired to work for the program. So the other things that I did at that workshop was then I took the field dressing and butchering deer class. We had a deer that was harvested at the game farm that morning and learned how to take it from hanging in the tree, skin it, break it down, and then we took some of the nicer cuts and had the kitchen cook it. They kind of didn't do a great job.
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah, and so, you know.
I want to dive into this.
Yeah, okay.
I'm glad you covered on all these other ones. I forgot about the other, because you get to do 4 classes, right? Mm-hmm. So your dad grew up on a farm. Had you any experience butchering anything up until that point?
No, cleaning fish. Cleaned a ton of fish.
I wanted. So let's animal ethics standpoint. You know, you especially big farms, the way it's kind of ran. Some of the things you hear or see online, or just from people in the industry. What was your stance like with fish? Because that's obviously a big one too for a lot of people. Is I can remember fishing growing up. You just threw the fish up on shore, you threw the fish over. It's not dead, flopping around, slowly dying of hypoxia, basically, because they're not in water. Was that ever a thought growing up, or like about fish ethics, I guess?
No, and I don't know why. I think it's pretty common for people to sort of draw a line between things that have fur and then things that have feathers and scales. Why is that different? It's not different for me now, but I think it was just a cultural thing. Yeah. That's how everybody else was around me. So we were pretty careful about like keeping fish on a stringer and down in the water until it was time to clean them. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why I never really felt sorry for the fish, to speak. And then, you know, my older brothers, I'm a little kid, they're teenagers, they're really naughty. They're pulling tiny little perch out of the lake. And this is terrible. This was early 1970s. They'd put a firecracker in the fish and throw it in the water and laugh as the fish blew up. This is totally boys, right? Yeah. Boys do naughty stuff like that. So I got to forgive them because it was a long time ago, and this is just how people were. They would never do that today. One of those brothers today keeps some koi and some other fish and reptiles in beautiful, well-kept settings. And he said some of his fish have more soul in their eyes than some dogs that he meets while walking his dog on the street. Like, he has this total respect for fish and this total abhorrence for the way that he behaved as a younger person.
That's so fascinating.
Yeah,
how
it
people
is.
change. Yeah, and I'm always curious about that. Like you said, the line in the sand, or the line in the sand, or how people your thoughts on life change as we all get older. So that's cool to see. So going back to the deer, what were your first thoughts? Were you more uncomfortable about that than the firearm?
No, I don't think so. I think I was really fascinated, and it was just sort of my first inkling of, gosh, it's kind of romantic to think about going out and getting your own food to get protein other than the beans in the garden or the eggs from the chickens.
Yeah.
And so that was my first fascination, was food. This would be so cool. And yeah.
Cool.
The food, once that animal, especially once it was skinned, it became totally food in my head.
Yeah.
It wasn't gross to me. I didn't feel bad for the deer. I knew it had been humanely harvested. I knew that it had been done that morning, and that it was being cared for in a respectful way, because the instructor who was teaching the class kind of integrated gently respect for the animal into the way that she spoke about it as we handled it. And so I started thinking somewhat differently about hunters. I started understanding that not all hunters are slobs. They're not out there to just shoot them up. I still thought that those who had great respect were far in the minority. And maybe at that time I was even kind of right, but I think that's changed a lot. And I'm really happy to say that I think it's changed. There are still the idiots out there, but there are so many good people in the hunting community that I would have never guessed existed.
For sure. Is there through bow, because you kind of touched on it with the instructor for field dressing, the conversion we have in both mindset and language for when an animal is alive, to like when you said it's been skinned and it is now food. There's a cow on the field, there's beef in your freezer, there's a deer in the woods, there's venison in the garage or wherever you're processing it. Is there any, or have you ever had this conversation or kind of followed this rabbit hole of maybe psychology, language, food? I don't know, probably life and death involved in there. Is that ever? I don't even know how you'd go about teaching this, but it's just something I've become more aware of as having the conversation with friends of mine who are from the animal ethics standpoint. Like, hey, how can you love something and kill it? How can you say you love something and then kill it and eat it? Like, that's, for a lot of people, that's a heavy line of consciousness. So for me, it's always like looking at it from, thousands of years of language. So the deer is now venison. I don't know where I'm going with this. If any of this.
No, I think I know what you mean, and it's hard. It is hard to explain to other people. And my first realization of that was, in my early hunting days, turkey hunting was my jam. It's like that was the first thing that really got me in love with hunting, because turkey hunting is just so exciting, as we all know.
Definitely.
And I was like, for the first couple of years, a little obsessed with turkeys. And I remember one morning out walking the dog with my kid with me, and he was like 8, and it was in spring, and there was a hen turkey nested in the ditch, just right on, it was a country road, but she had nested right in the ditch. And the dog wandered over. We didn't see it, but the dog smelled it, busted the turkey, and, burst out of the ditch. And I'm like, oh, that was so cool. It was a turkey. Oh my God, did you see that? That was a hen. She's nested there. And my child says, Mom, if you love the turkey so much, why do you want to shoot it? And I said, I'm going to have to think about that one. And I don't think I ever really came up with a solid answer. It's just like, maybe I rationalize it in my head, like it's a management practice that we certainly need for deer and turkey to be able to manage the numbers so that we keep them at both a biological and social carrying capacity that works for the land and for people. I don't know. It's hard, isn't it?
Oh, it's super hard. That's why I love this question. I ask it, look, going back to your, the different levels of hunters, I ask some people this and they look at me like they're like, are you high? Are you on something right now? And then other people like yourself are, we're stumped by it because I think a large part of it comes from what we've been talking about from the beginning about, and we say, it gets covered as traditional farming practices when we talk about big scale farming, but really that's not traditional. That's just in the brief little glimpse of human history and human evolution that we live in, that our parents and grandparents lived in, that has become the norm. And we're getting to the point where we're realizing like, oh man, we messed up. And I think we've become so far removed from natural, and I know that's a co-opted word that gets abused all the time, natural, but maybe from evolutionary history or systems, we've become so far removed so that when, we hunt, we fish, which are some of the most ancient of human practices that you can come across, like first artwork, hunting and fishing is what we find, right? But we've become so far removed from historical reasons, and now we're humans, we got these crazy frontal lobes that ask all these silly questions and we don't have answers for. We're wrestling again with the why, and it's super fascinating. I don't have an answer. I just like asking that question because I love listening to other people's interpretation of it, right? Because how the hell is my stupid brain going to have answers to these questions that are being asked from thousands of years of human life and influence on the environment? And I don't know. Yeah, there's no easy answer. Just a bunch of
And yeah, so for people who don't understand how you can love an animal and then go shoot it and eat it, we as hunters know though, like that just sitting out there and having that connection to nature and to be able to read the signs and find the right place to set up and to be patient and to appreciate all that's going on around you, regardless of whether or not the deer or the turkey walks by, or regardless of if a grouse flushes on that day. You get to see your dog work, and isn't that one of the greatest joys of doing that? And if you have the good fortune to be able to harvest an animal, then the person who's coming at it with the right heart has earned it, and then you do that animal great respect by caring for it and preparing it in the very best of ways. So you've got all of this time and passion and love into that venison or whatever that's in the freezer. So when you get it out to cook it, don't you just give it the royal treatment to turn it into something that you're really going to love to eat and that you take the time to enjoy rather than shoveling. It's not Hamburger Helper. It's something that deserves so much more. And that's part of being healthy too, I think. Not just that you're eating healthy food, but your relationship to how you eat. And when, I raise or go get or harvest any of the food myself, I feel like I appreciate and enjoy it so much more because I know where it came from and I know how much work it was. And so I want to make something delicious and sit and enjoy every aspect of it. The taste, the smell, the way it looks on the plate, obviously all of that.
I love that. It's a great answer. Boom. All right, let's dive into. Oh man, we're almost at an hour. Let's dive into number 3. So what was the third class? You had firearms, and then you had...
I had firearm, shotgun, field dressing
separate.
And butchering and deer. And then I had to take the chainsaw safety class because my father was always making wood. We had a wood burning stove, we had a fireplace, we had a wood cook stove in the house. And so he loved to heat the whole house with wood. That was just his passion.
Yeah.
But when he was cutting up firewood out in the yard with the chainsaw, we could not be on that side of the driveway. I think he didn't want anybody to distract him. You know, he needed to concentrate, didn't want anybody to get hurt. I was terrified of that thing. I was terrified when I took the class. I still don't like power tools today, but I took the class. I bucked up a couple of red pines that the instructor had dropped, did some delimbing, walked away going, I did that. And then I took the pulp cut course at the university. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Not at all.
Students who are earning any degree in natural resources can take a class, a 1-credit class where they do some classroom time on chainsaw safety. Then they go out to a red pine plantation and they cut trees for paper. So dropping 20 to 30 foot, 6 to 8 inch diameter red pines, delimbing, bucking them up, put them on the truck for a whole day, an 8-hour day. And at the end of the day, you're like, I am so strong.
Yeah.
So that was the other class, and that was kind of a revelation for me. Like, I didn't think I could do it. I was scared. I did it. I rock.
I rock. Badass. I love it. All right, so that gets us through the first bow weekend. Going back to the question then of what was the next step? How did you link all of those experiences and then combine them into a lifestyle that had hunting and procuring your own meat?
Well, somewhere in there, I had the good fortune of getting a place just outside of Amherst. So
Okay.
I had been living in Wausau, and then I think it was 97. My sister and her husband had a dairy farm just outside Amherst. They still live on that property, but they're not dairy farming anymore for reasons, which is a whole nother podcast that I'm sure you're aware of. But they also had the farm next door that they were renting out, and they were tired of being landlords. And I said, I'll buy that house.
Yeah.
And they're like, excellent. And so, you know, a month later, just all kind of on a whim, I'm living on 4 acres in the middle of my sister's 120-acre dairy farm, which gives me the opportunity to get chickens, which gives me the opportunity to walk about 3/4 of a mile out to where there's some woods and a back pasture where the deer all hang out as soon as the shooting starts on the first day of the 9-day gun season. So, you know, I've got a place to hunt. I have a place to grow food. I can have a big garden. And I just immediately threw myself into that lifestyle. And even kind of, I think, went overboard the first year that I had meat birds, that I raised meat chickens. I was like, I'm doing this all myself. I'm going to, you know, chop their head off, put them in the pot to boil, pluck them, whole thing myself, because I wanted self-sufficiency.
Yeah.
And after the first 25 birds, I went, all right, so this is good. I did this, but let's be realistic about the whole day that I just spent doing this, when a few miles away there's a local guy who will butcher the chickens. You drop them off at 10 o'clock. He calls you at 11:30 and says they're done.
Yep.
And they're beautifully clean, and it's $3 a bird.
Yeah.
I'm supporting what he's making a living off of, and now I've just saved myself a whole big, messy, stinky day where I can apply myself to something that I'm actually good at.
Yeah.
So, you know, that was part of the evolution of I'm going to do it all myself, but scaling back and being reasonable about, you know, nobody has to be perfect. Like when you start to talk to people about maybe not buying meat in the grocery store or whatever, it's like you don't have to be an angel about it. Every once in a while, you're going to maybe go to McDonald's or whatever, but every little thing that we can do to be more sustainable, it counts. It matters.
Definitely.
Because that's another aspect of it for me, is like I'm not trying to make the whole world want to be a hunter. There's not enough room for us all to hunt. But I would very much like people to reconsider their grocery store food buying habits. We've got so many opportunities for great local food in this community that, you know, I try to get or grow as much as I can that doesn't come from the grocery store.
I like it. I like it. I want to ask you, so we brought up these, it's 9/11. Do you have to leave anytime soon?
I'm all right.
Okay. The 6 stages of hunter development. So as someone who, would you consider yourself an adult hunter? What is it? Adult onset hunter?
Yeah.
Okay. Someone coming from that background and just your I guess super cerebral approach to it, which I love. Your shooting stage. So this is stage number 1. The impulse here is to get a shot off quickly, usually at the first animal that appears. Is this a stage you ever encountered?
Nope. I felt pressured to take that role by people that I hunted with early on,
Yep.
but so that's why I said when I mentioned this that I don't think this is applicable anymore. I think it was when it was actually developed by 2 cats over at UW La Crosse, and I can't remember their names, but 2 professors who wanted to look at this so that we had a better understanding of hunters and who they were.
Yeah.
And it applied at the time, but it's no longer applicable because hunters are no longer all white guys.
I'm glad you said it. It's so true. So I love it. And I want to go through these and listen to your, because like you said, it's not completely applicable because were the 2 cats from UW La Crosse white guys?
Yeah.
Yes. I was going to say, it's looking at it, it looks to me like a white guy list. It looks to me like the classifications of my fellow white guy hunters. Like I look at this list and I'm like, I've been in there because I've been sucked in and I've agreed to the white guy hunting journey or trajectory. And only recently in the last couple of years have I realized, like, I don't need any of this shit. Like, my own reasons for hunting are my own, right? So I'm gonna love hearing your take on all of these.
So just to be fair to the white guys who created this
Yeah,
thing,
yeah,
they
yeah.
didn't just make this up out of
Oh.
whole cloth. They did real research.
Yep,
They surveyed
yep.
people across the country.
Yeah.
So again, for that time, that was valid.
Yep.
research.
Oh yeah, I'm not being like, however you.
Oh, I know you're not. I
disparaging
just
it.
didn't want to make sure I was kind of giving the wrong impression
Yeah.
of that.
Definitely. And I'm looking at all the pictures. All but 1 have white guys. So just to be fair to the pictures.
What website are you on?
I'm on the Texas Parks and Wildlife page.
Right.
So we're just to be fair on all sides. All right. The limiting out stage. This hunter wants to always bag the limit. This may cause a hunter to take unsafe shots or misidentify targets. For looking at this, the first thing that comes to mind is grouse hunting in Wisconsin right now. So the big hoopla, as I'm sure you're well aware, is there's the quote unquote healthy forest debate. Oh, we're not the environment. We used to have all these crazy grouse numbers when our grandparents hunted, and now the numbers are decreasing. It's obviously because habitat loss. Well, no, we just created an unsustainable and unrealistic amount of young forest from the cutover period. And then the other one is being, well, instead of decreasing the bag limit, which is at 5 right now, which I feel is maybe a tad overzealous, maybe bringing that to 3 for a period of time. What are your thoughts on limiting out stage?
I was never in that position, so I guess I can't even speak to it. I mean, I know that it's a thing. I think it's also a thing in the waterfowl hunting world. But I'm not a duck hunter. I've been a goose hunter in the past. I'm not anymore. And my grouse hunting experience has been just having a lovely walk through the woods with a dog, and I've shot 1 because I just have not had the opportunity to go. I don't have a bird dog. I don't know very many people who do grouse hunt, so as far as limiting out, I've never seen enough birds fly to have even entertained that idea.
Yeah.
And I don't think I would have. I've always just been really grateful for even seeing whatever it was I was going after, much less shooting.
I like it. The trophy stage. This is a big one in Wisconsin, for sure. Big bucks. I talked about this with Bryce and Zach on a BHA podcast we did recently. And we've got no hatred for big bucks. They're cool to look at. But for the trophy stage, success for the hunter is judged by quality, not quantity. The hunter is very selective and will pass on many opportunities that do not match the desired trophy characteristics. So I want to hear your thoughts on this, and then I think we all as hunters, as anglers, have the idea of a trophy, but I think that the trophy is different for all of us, right? The trophy could be the walk. It could be, for me, my biggest trophy are feathers we find from random birds. Like I love collecting feathers I find just out in the woods. So what about for yourself? What does that look like?
Oh, what's a trophy?
Yeah.
Yeah, the trophy is the experience. My attitude toward the trophy hunting, like big racks and whatever, is part of me says bullshit. I really don't like it. And then I think about some people who I know who really are kind of trophy hunters, and they're super respectful and they totally take their time, and it's not about, I got to get my deer this year. I know a guy who, he'll follow an individual buck all during the season, through the scouting season, and that's the one he's going to take. And when he tells his story in a series of 18,000 pictures, and there's all that passion there, and I don't know how old he is. He's younger than I am, but he's not super young. You can just, he's like exuding his passion and his love for this, and you can tell that he's not just proud because God got myself a big buck. He's proud because of the experience that he had. So there's ambivalence that I feel for the whole trophy hunting thing, because I know some people are good, and then there's some people who just are in it for the bragging rights, and I guess that's where I think that it becomes shitty. So big deal. You got a big rack.
Mm-hmm.
I myself I would love to see a really big buck up close and have that close encounter, and I wouldn't shoot it. I always go for the tiny deer because, and this sounds terrible because I know there are some people who think it's rotten to shoot a fawn too, but that's a deer that I can totally handle. I can pick it up and throw it on the back of my Subaru Outback and get it home and string it up and have it all skinned and cut up in, a very short amount of time, and then there's still room in my freezer for when the chickens get butchered. So to me, that's a trophy.
There you go. I love it. Love that to death. Method stage. Here, the process and challenge of hunting becomes the primary focus of the hunter. So a more challenging method, such as using a bow, muzzleloader, or handgun, may be chosen. So this is we see this because traditional archery is taking off. Like more and more people in the the bow hunting world, I think people are just tired of new gear, new bow setups every year. Like, oh, this is what you need to be the hunter, the best. It's just become like a gear race, and you see more and more people are like, nah, and they go and build a recurve or build a long bow and use that. And I think of my buddy Drew Youngdyke up in Michigan, he tries to grouse hunt with a traditional bow. So that I always think of that. I'm like, dude, you just make it hard on yourself. I like it. But for you, has this become the method stage?
Nope.
Nope.
I like some adversity when it comes to hunting. I want to be able to work at it a little bit. And early on, I thought, I'm going to make it really hard. I'm going to become a muzzle loader hunter for deer right off the bat, because I got to shoot black powder at a shooting range, and I thought it was really cool. And I thought, ooh, I'm going to reinvent myself and get buckskins and be a rendezvous woman. And I just totally fell in love with this romance side of that, that sort of culture of shooting. And so I shot my first deer with a 270, but then I I started practicing with black powder, round balls, 50 caliber, and I thought, yep, I'm pretty good at this. And then I got invited to go to a friend's hunting camp land over near Green Bay, lots of marshy areas, hunting from stands. They had pumpkins out, they were baiting, which I was a little uncomfortable with, but I thought, well, I am hunting with a muzzle loader, and this will give me an opportunity to get something in close enough to be able to shoot it. And a little one-sided buck walks in, shoot the deer, it drops. This was metro hunting, like you could hear cars and stuff. And so I get on the radio and say, okay, I just shot a little buck. And they're like, great, we're coming in the four-wheelers.
Yeah.
Doesn't this all sound horrible? Like,
Sounds...
it's so opposite of the experience you want to have with a muzzle loader. But, you got to take what you can get when somebody invites you to hunt.
Yep.
That's a huge honor.
Yep.
And so this is all going on, and the buck stands up and walks into the marsh grass and disappears. I knocked it down. It was there for, maybe a minute, and it stands up and walks away. I don't know what I did.
Yep.
I mean, I thought that I had hit it right where I was supposed to.
Yeah.
I maybe spined it.
Yep.
Maybe had a wonky set on my round ball or whatever.
Yep.
And, well, I guess the only other part of the story that matters is I sobbed for like 2 days because we never found the deer.
Yeah.
And so then I went, screw the black powder. My goal here is to humanely harvest an animal, enjoy the experience, and put meat in the freezer. And if I want to, put some time into making it harder, then I'm going to make that transition to archery, and which I did for a little while, and I would like to get back to it, but it takes a lot of commitment. You got to be able to be really, you have to practice, and be really confident that you're
Yep.
going to be able to make that shot.
Yep.
So that deer doesn't disappear, a wounded animal. I'll never do that again. I mean, I don't think I did anything. I wasn't making a rash decision.
Yeah.
When I pulled that trigger, things just didn't go well, and I don't ever want to have that happen again.
Yeah. I like it. That moment sucks for everyone. Like if you've hunted long enough, it's happened to you at least once.
Exactly, yeah.
The sportsman stage, the total. What are your thoughts on the word sportsman when it comes to hunting, or hunting as a sport?
Oh yeah. So, who is that cat? AJ DeRosa? Have you?
He was at he came to UWSP
Right.
this last year. I loved his presentation. It ruffled a lot of feathers in the audience.
And we'll talk about him some other time. But
For
he
sure.
has the one thing that he said that I really liked was how he said that to describe hunting as a sport, how that doesn't sit well with people who are not hunters, and I can't remember the words that he used to say that, but that was the one thing in that presentation that really resonated with me until I forgot what it was.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, so sports are competitive. It's who goes the fastest, who makes the most points, who wins.
Mm-hmm.
And so how can hunting really be called a sport in that manner? Because if you don't shoot the grouse, does that mean you lose?
Yeah.
So I'm not terribly comfortable for that reason with hunting being called a sport.
Agreed. For me, the idea of sport is we're built off of basically when I look at history, sport was built off of hunting, gathering, and war, like things people did a lot of back. We're always fighting over resources through the history of humankind, and hunting and fishing. So how do you get good at those things? You practice throwing stuff. You practice running, because running makes you fit to run down an animal, to track, to guide. Hand-eye coordination, super important if you're going to be throwing nets at birds to try to capture them. So for me, it was like sport was built off of these other things that humans have been doing forever. So no, I totally agree. Like, to compare hunting to something where it's a game, it's like you said, win-loss, like it's never sat well with me either. So No, I was just curious. We don't even have to. And like you said, when this list was made, at the time this was like this was like the list. This is how people. This is in this journey to get to where we are now, having this conversation about hunting. This was a step, right? This was a step in that journey. So
yeah.
I'm not looking at it with judgment. I'm going through it and then trying to understand.
So it's sort of like the outdoor recreation adoption model. Are you familiar with that?
I think so.
Okay, well, we're going to go over it on Saturday when you come to the Hunter Mentor training.
Perfect.
But it's sort of the hunter adoption model in the same way, but it doesn't apply anymore because hunters today don't look like hunters looked in the 1970s.
I like it. I'm so pumped for Saturday. I'll be you might have to give me like a question cap. I had that growing up. I had that in like all of my classes. I either tormented the teacher with constant questions or I fell asleep. You knew right away if I gave a damn about the class, because the report would either be he just doesn't shut up, he asks way too many questions, or he's sleeping in class.
There's no such thing as way too many questions, and if you're sleeping in class, it's probably your teacher's fault, right?
I don't know about. To this day I still fall asleep in some meetings. Like I'm like, I don't need to be here. I should be somewhere else. Anyways, the give back stage. This is the one I wanted to get to when I saw it. At this point, the hunter is motivated by the desire to pass on proper hunting values, safety skills, responsible attitudes. For me, this is where the R3 movement comes in, which I'm a super big fan of, and I'm so appreciative that you're giving me the opportunity to assist becoming an outdoorswoman, which is just such an awesome program. I'm a huge fan of, so I'm super pumped for Saturday. I want to hear your thoughts, I guess, on the R3 movement in general, which is recruitment, retention, reactivation for people listening in the hunting, angling space. What are your thoughts on it, and how do we grow it, or what are you doing to grow it currently?
Well, what I'm doing to grow it is to offer these hunter mentor trainings and the Learn to Hunt for Food programs. So when Learn to Hunt started in this state, however many years ago, 15, maybe more than that, those programs were largely targeted toward kids, like, gotta get the kids out there, we're gonna lose our tradition of hunting. Well, most of the kids showing up for those Learn to Hunt opportunities came from hunting families anyway. And so
Speaking to the choir.
Right. So they were going to get a chance to hunt whether or not you gave them the special hunt or not, including my kid. My kid got invited to the governor's youth deer hunt when he was 12 years old because of what his mother's job was.
Yeah.
You know, I could have taken him hunting, but like, how do you turn down the governor's hunt?
Yeah.
That the governor didn't actually show up for, but that's okay.
Classic.
So somewhere in there, and talking to the folks at the DNR who were running the Learn to Hunt programs, I said, how about if we do hunts for adults? And just see what happens with that, with the idea in mind of the Becoming an Outdoorswoman audience. And so we did a bow Learn to Hunt for adult women, and then started to get this notion that there are young adults, millennials, who come from non-hunting families who now have, they seem to have this interest in sustainable food, local food, a relationship with the land that they didn't have growing up. They maybe want to learn to hunt, but who's going to take them? And for their hunting peers, that might be kind of intimidating, because if you're, say, a 20-year-old guy and you've never shot a gun, are you going to be comfortable with your 20-year-old buddy who's in your same class who's been hunting since he was 5 or whatever? So started gearing the Learn to Hunts toward young adults, and this has been really fun for me, and this is my passion for an R3 thing that we're doing, is to provide learn to hunt opportunities for young adults. And then an important thing is to give them some follow-up experiences so that it's not a one and done.
Yeah.
So to, if they've been to the deer hunt this spring, contact them, say, hey, we're doing the turkey hunt. If you can't do it, that's all right. Maybe you can come out to the shooting range on the day that we're patterning shotguns, and you're welcome to join us for that, just to make them aware of future opportunities so that they can take the next step if they want it without having to look too hard.
I like it. I like it a lot. So general thoughts on R3? What's being done well, and then maybe what are some actionable steps for other people, if that works?
Well, I think what is happening nationwide is being done fairly well. Certainly we've got the recruitment end of things pretty well covered. So there's the recruitment is the first step, and you can offer becoming an outdoorswoman, or you can offer a range day, or all these things where it's an initial experience. But we really need to hammer on the retention part of it with more varied activities. And this is part of the outdoor recreation adoption model, but I think we need more of an effort to do learn to hunts, range days, go walk through the woods and look for mushrooms, and oh look, this is deer habitat too. More of those kinds of things, maybe less formal, easier for people to just go show up and do rather than to sign up for a formal program. But that takes just a ton of effort, a lot of people power. It takes money because the people who are doing it, they don't need to necessarily be paid, but they need to be within a job that, like, R3 is part of their job, and they're offering these things. So it's a tough one.
It is. I like it. For my small piece in it as a hunter, and I kind of like we've been talking about, we don't want everyone hunting, but we want the right people hunting, or a greater appreciation from people that don't hunt about what all goes into it. And something I think, where I, just from what I do for a living, the network of people I know, for me it's been about the retention and reactivation. So I think about all of the older people I know that mentored me in hunting growing up. A lot of them don't hunt anymore, and I look at it from like what stopped them, and for a lot of them it was health and fitness related. So the only time of year they were out walking or doing activity was during hunting season, and you get to a certain point that doesn't work anymore. You find out, oh, the brakes need to be brakes. I need new brakes. I need new alignment, or something went wonky in the off season, and they phase out in that regard. Or maybe they're one of their kids aren't living near them, so they don't want to hunt by themselves. They've gotten to the point, where it's like my dad especially. If I didn't invite him out to hunt with me, I don't think he would go, because for him it's story time. He wants to just talk. I think about...
You come by it honestly then. Right?
Yeah. I know exactly where I got my gift for Gab from. But growing up, he was very much like, I made noise. Like, he was on me. He's like, you are quiet when you are in the woods. You don't yell. You don't bring annoying little bags of anything. I go hunting with him now. He's constantly snacking on something, and he brings the loudest bag you can find, and I just laugh because I'm like, it's so weird to see his transition from how serious he used to take it, and I know it's rubbed off on me because I get that way. I love my alone time hunting with the dog or in a tree stand, and then I hunt with him, and he's always talking. And then he gets animated and he gets louder, and then the annoying bag of food comes out. So for me, it's like, who can I reach out to and invite them to come shoot with me? Invite them to come walk, just a walk through the woods with the dog. People that I know used to hunt and they have all these great hunting stories. How do I get them back just in the woods? Maybe once. Maybe they only go out that one time in the season, but they're like, oh yeah, I'll buy a small game tag, or I'll buy a duck stamp to go sit in the marsh in a kayak with you, like those kind of things. That's for me. That's like what I'm thinking more and more about is, who can I reach out to? Who in hunting have I talked to recently, and they've kind of expressed like, I don't know if I'm going to go hunting this year. I'm just like, who can I reach out to and hopefully get them excited about it again? That's kind of where I'm going to steer myself towards in 2020, and then under your guidance, be able to hopefully help in the spring hunt and mentor someone. I'm not at a place where I want to mentor in the fall. I'm too
That's perfectly legitimate.
I'm too self-absorbed at that point. So that's kind of where I'm at with. So I'm pumped for Saturday and your guidance. I don't know if any of that rambling made sense to you.
Yeah, it did. So, and I'm interested about the lapsed hunters as well, and I'm unsure of really how to approach that because when asked, why don't you buy a license anymore? This is specifically for deer hunting. Many of the lapsed hunters are saying there are no deer, which we know isn't true.
I saw plenty of deer this year.
Yeah. But there's this perception that particularly in the northern counties that there are no deer, and they're pissed off at the DNR for whatever mismanagement they perceive. And so a lot of them are saying that's why they're not hunting. I'm not sure that is the entire story. So I did, for my master's degree I did an independent study, and part of that class was to run focus groups for lapsed hunters. And that's what they were saying at the time. Now that was, I don't know, it was 15 years ago.
Okay.
So maybe it's changed, but I think, if we can ask more lapsed hunters, why is it that you're not hunting anymore, and really get a good beat on that, then we would know whether or not there was anything we could do to get them reactivated.
Yeah, I like it. Well, let's we're going an hour and a half, which is crazy.
I know, I can talk a lot.
I was loving our conversation. What does the workshop series look like for this year for Bo? And then I got the page somewhere. And then how can people get involved? How can they contact you? And then I like to end with concluding thoughts. So if you've got anything you want to wrap up the episode with, feel free.
Okay, workshop schedule. We do 2 big 3-day multi-course weekends per year, as I mentioned earlier, one in February, which is now finished, and another at the end of August. I think the dates that are on the website are incorrect. I'll correct those when I get back to the office. So those are our 2 big ones. Those are sampler platter activities. I'm also adding in September a sort of a mini bow at Central Wisconsin Environmental Station, which is going to be a little shorter, a little less expensive than the 3-day weekend. And I'm curious to see what kind of a turnout we get for that. We do for the first weekend in June, which is Wisconsin's free fishing weekend. You can go fishing without buying a license. You can sign up to go to learn how to, and to have a guided experience, either fly fishing on the Wapaka River or in boats spin cast fishing out on the Wisconsin River. Let's see, we do some trips in, I think it's in July.
I see Isle Royale.
Oh. Yeah. That's a smaller kayak and camping trip. So we take 8 people if you want to have a more immersive, intimate, nearly true wilderness experience on that island where there are wolves and moose. Mm-hmm. Pretty cool thing. This is something that, it's not really entry level for most people, at least not perceived to be. They might think, well, I can't do that. Anybody can do it. All of our workshops are designed for brand new beginners. There's, any, if you have any physical need, special needs, we can almost always work our way around it, unless it comes to something like rock climbing, maybe not. Let's see, I'm going to try to do a shooting clinic somewhere in the area also in July. And and got a couple of learn to hunts coming up. Learn to hunt pheasants at Pheasants by the Fox. It's a really cute little game farm in Princeton. And then we'll do our annual Learn to Hunt whitetail deer up at Tree Haven Field Station, which is part of the University College of Natural Resources near Tomahawk. We do international trips too. So we just finished a trip to Costa Rica, one to Baja next week, 2 trips back to back in Iceland, 2 different trips in Africa, one to Tanzania and one to Uganda. And those are kind of new, and the people who went on them last year are still talking, laughing, crying, telling stories, life-changing experiences. Neither of those are hunting trips. But in Tanzania, you do have the opportunity to go with a native tribe and follow them on a hunt.
That would be sweet.
Yeah.
Cool. And then people can just reach out to you through becoming an outdoorswoman?
Yeah, if you Google just Wisconsin Bow, WIBOW, it'll get you to the Wisconsin Bow website.
I'll put the link in there.
The URL is really long because we're nested within the university, but Wisconsin Bow will get you there.
Perfect. Any concluding thoughts for people?
I'm not good at in a nutshell because I get talking on too long.
Same.
Concluding thoughts. If you're somebody who is interested in doing things outdoors, but you feel like maybe you don't know where to go or it's a little intimidating to you, becoming an outdoorswoman is just a warm, welcoming place to learn at your own speed and, maybe step outside your comfort zone a little and walk away feeling like a renewed sense of self-confidence, or maybe newfound sense of self-esteem.
I like it. Thanks for coming on, Peggy.
Yeah, thank you.
Boom. It was fun.
It was.
Good. And we'll see each other Saturday.
Sounds good. Bam.